guitar friends. Today I've been doing a little bit of work on the Vib-Rola number 2 project for the Martin archtop, and over the past year or so we're playing and experimenting with the Vib-Rola that I put on the D'Angelico chat project. Gave me a few little ideas to try out that I think would improve the operation of the Vib-Rola. So what it basically centers around in this project is freeing up the pieces, the string attachment piece and the plate or the body of the Vib-Rola. Now, this is for a solid body. Naturally, you know, it's too short for an archtop. So what I did was to repeat what I did for the D'Angelico and make a longer piece to fit an archtop using the solid body as a pattern. And so we've got our outline here of how it should be from the original piece, and with a little improvement here. I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, but there's a little indentation there, and that shouldn't be there, and it wasn't made that way. What made that was when this was assembled and this piece went into this piece and made that indentation. It's very tight. The original had a rivet, and there's the rivet that I drilled out of here, just like these, that had this piece riveted in there, and it was tight. You could hardly move it, you know, with your hand, and so you know that's going to be a problem right off. So what I did on the previous version was I put a pin in here, a hardened steel pin, and that freed this piece to move. I didn't do anything about this piece though. So on this one, of course, it was all tight as well. What I did here was I spread this apart a little bit with a screwdriver, you know, opened that up, and also I spread this a little bit and opened it up a little bit, not enough to really bend it, but just to give it some relief, and put some oil down in the crack here, and I worked it and worked it and worked it all down in there until I got it to where it's nice and free now. Nothing binding, or you don't have to force anything. You let the string tension and the spring do all the work without any opposition, you know, from this binding. So that was eliminated. To put this back together now, instead of using the hardened pin, as before. This time I took a little different approach. And these are brass sleeves that I found that were about the size that I needed. And this is a 440 screw, which is about the size of the original rivet. A little bit smaller, but it's the right size for this bushing with just a little bit of play. And so I drilled this hole here out big enough to add a bushing in. And this is the bushing that is filed down. I started with this and I filed it down to that thickness. So now what we have a piece of metal that's 2.11 thick. It's 1, 2, 10, about 10 and a half. And then we have the little bushing, which is 2.5. So if you count from 11, that's 11, 12, 13, 14. That's about 18 and a half thousandths thicker than the plate. So we put this little bushing in here, and we have clearance on the bottom and clearance on the top a little bit. And to fill that in, we can take a couple pieces of 5/1000 brass and cut us a little brass washer to go on each side, and to take up some of the slop. So now this bushing is a little bigger than this hole that's originally in the Vib-Rola. So when we put this together, we can now put a screw in here with a nut on the back, and tighten it down tight against that bushing without interfering with the free travel of the base plate or the little string piece. And another thing that I did right here, going back to this little indentation that was made by this piece being jammed into this piece, I filed that down a little bit so we have a little more travel. And if you pull this all the way, against the spring eyelet, well, that's as far as you can go. So you still have straight line strings. You still have a little bit of, you haven't bottomed out on the end. Or if you go the other way, all the way against this eyelet, which you'd never go that far because the straight line of the string, wouldn't let you go past there. So you got a lot of room now with nothing binding here on those edges. And that is a nice free piece now. Nothing is binding or nothing is going to impair you know, the tuning when you operate the Vib-Rola to bring it back into tune. That was, I guess, the big gripe you hear from people about these things is you use them once and your guitar goes out of tune and you have to retune it. Well, that was true. Very true. But just working and experimenting over the past couple of years has brought me to this point where now I think I've got a pretty good solution for a workable Vib-Rola. Why a Vib-Rola, you ask? Well, that's a good question. This is one of the first, or maybe the first, vibrato attachments that was ever made for a guitar. And in the 30s and 40s is when their heyday was. And you know, if you want to get that authentic 1940s vibe with that growling vibrato sound, you just about got to use one of these. And the reason is when you operate one of these, the strings do not go in and out of, the pitch is not raised and lowered proportionally as you would have with a Bigsby, for example. You know, you can raise or lower the pitch with a Bigsby. Every string's in tune, up or down. You know, because you have that round bar and it's all the same size and the same distance, same tension. Well, here you don't have that. This is a very non-linear thing. Some strings go out of tune more than other strings when you pull the vibe arm. And that gives it, I guess, a timbre or a color that's very, you know, period correct if you're wanting to capture that 1940s vibe. There just nothing comes close to the sound you can get out of a Vib-Rola. Another thing that really makes this, I guess, unique is this is a very thin piece of steel. It's not cast or thick aluminum like you would have with a Bigsby or some of the Gibsons in the early 60s would be very heavy things. And this does not lay against the top of the guitar as you would have with a Bigsby, which you have pressure against the top, pressing down, you know, and that affects the sound of the guitar. And also it has an effect on the string, you know, the I guess the sustain of the strings, maybe. This is free floating. When you have it on the guitar, you're only touching 2 points back here, which would be, you know, a couple of slots here, which I haven't made yet. And so you're just kind of hooked there on a couple of pins, and you have everything is under tension. And you get this nice sustained sound that I've never been able to get with a Bigsby or a Gibson or, you know, any other sort of a vintage type of Vib-Rola. And so I think that's kind of a nice sound.